Hey everybody, Hunter back again from Showtime Studios. Part number two on the mud and caked on dirt weathering process. As you can see, I went ahead and did everything underneath of where the suspension components are going to go. The one thing that I didn't make mention of in the first video is as you're putting this on and doing this technique and you still have parts that needs to be glued on, be careful around your mounting points on how much actual putty you get built up in those areas. Try to keep it, to a minimum right now. Like I say, this is just to get a coat down before we put all the suspension into place, and it makes it look pretty realistic when you're done. So, like I say, I went through and I've got the mud technique down on everything that's here. And the one thing that I highly recommend is this is the TS80 flat clear from Tamiya. And I keep can upon can of this stuff because it's a very nice product. Love it. Gives you a nice finish. What I do is once this putty dries a little bit, and being lacquer based and being put on this thin, 10 or 15 minutes, you're pretty much dry, ready to go. Go ahead and overcoat it with a coat of this flat. Now you don't have to use the Tamiya testers makes it. You can use any type of flat that you want to. That works. Just make sure that you have enough experience with it to know what you can put on top of it. I know with the TS80, I can put pretty much any other paint or weathering technique or anything like that on top of it without any weird effects or catastrophic failures, I guess you could say. So that's the point that we're at right now. And I went ahead and moved the suspension arms that I'd already put on around so I could get the mud up underneath of those also. Now, I haven't done anything on the suspension arms as far as the mud technique, and I won't do that until I get the suspension into place. So what we're going to do next is after we have this overcoated, like I say, with the flat clear, we're going to go ahead and put a base color down. Now, the base color that I usually like to put down when I'm doing this technique is whatever color the bare plastic was, or if you have a base color, like if you have white plastic and you want your base to be green, put down that same base color. But in this case, we're going to be using Tamiya XF74, which is olive drab. It's a Japanese olive drab. And I've got some of that mixed up in the airbrush now. We're going to go ahead and spray a coat on here. Get everything moved over here. And like I say, I've got it in my Sada Graph 1 airbrush that I've been using a lot for this, doing this weathering style techniques over the Grex. But you can use any airbrush you want to. So what we're going to do is go ahead and get a coat of a thin coat down on this. And, pressure on the airbrush and stuff like that is no big deal. Whatever works for you, whatever you're comfortable with, whichever airbrush you're comfortable with. You could even do this with a spray can if you were careful. So you have that option also. It's not necessarily an airbrush only technique, but I highly recommend using an airbrush. What we're doing is just, covering everything in. We're getting the base color of the vehicle as close to the base color of the vehicle as we can get over top of all this. Now, a lot of you are probably wondering, well, if you're creating mud, how come you're painting it green? That's where all this technique will come into play later on. So stay tuned because we will be showing how that works. So we're just going to spray all this down. The other thing you have to remember also is this is just initial. This is not something that has to be perfect right now because there's still a lot more work to go. And in all reality, this does not have to be totally covered in. You want to try to get it as opaque as you can. So try to cover up all the white the best that you can. but it doesn't have to be 100% perfectly covered at this point because you have so many other stages that goes over top of this. And another thing to remember as you're spraying this, you have to turn the model. I haven't turned it yet. I'll show you what I'm talking about here as soon as I get a little bit more sprayed. You want to make sure that you turn the model and get all of the peaks and valleys with your base color. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and turn the model around here to the other side. And this way we're shooting back across the model this way, and we're catching all the stuff that we didn't get from that side. And I'm going to go ahead and spray this area down here that I've already done the technique on, just to get it back to all a base color, and then that way I can show you guys how we do the technique as far as the next step in the dry brushing part of it. So I'm going to go ahead and cover this back up. And hopefully on camera it's showing up that it's not as heavy as it looked when we first put it on, because I'm not trying to be real heavy with the mud. I don't want a lot of mud caked on it. It's just simulating, you know, it's basically a vehicle that needs to be cleaned underneath, but these things never stay clean. Even if they spray the outside of it off, this is still pretty dirty underneath, depending on what conditions it's been run in. So I'm moving the suspension arms around a little bit here and trying to get a decent coat of paint down behind everything. So that way, if you set the steering at a show or whatever and you have this on a mirror, you know, when you move the steering to a different position, you don't have any white showing up. And like I say, you don't need, you know, total 100% coverage on this right now, because this is just an initial step. This is not something that's, you know, a done product right now. So be aware of that. You don't have to be absolutely perfect on this step. Okay, so we're just about covered in now. We actually used very little bit of paint to do this. Used about a cup out of here. What I call a cup, which is just this small piece on the airbrush here, the color cup. Very small in this airbrush's case. And the underneath of this particular vehicle is a different color olive drab than the top side. So that makes this technique also a little bit easier, because you are spraying a different color under the vehicle compared to on top of it. Okay, I think we've pretty much got that covered in. Put the airbrush back over here. And let's see if we can hold this up here a little bit closer and let everybody get a view of it, if I can get the camera to zoom in on it. Camera doesn't seem to be wanting to zoom in today for me. Nope, can't get a real good view of it. But as you can see, we are definitely, we toned down the texture that was in that with that base coat of paint. So that's pretty much the technique that you're looking for, and the result that you're looking for at this point in time. You'll notice that a lot of it looks flat, and then you have some little peaks and, you know, valleys here and there, and that's what we're going to be going back and airbrushing in a brownish mud color to simulate the caked on dirt. So that's all we've got for this one. Hopefully everybody understands, you know, what I've done up to this point. If not, leave a question on the video. I'll be more than glad to answer it for you. So stay tuned for the next part coming up. I'm going to go ahead and get some suspension components glued down to this, and then we'll carry on from that point. So that's all we got for right now. Like always, I thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.